Right now, it's time to work on our camera and make our camera to follow our player and make our player to rotate correctly. And those topics are a little bit advanced, but no worries, I will explain you everything. Easiest way to make our camera to follow our player would be to just simply drag and drop our main camera into the player. So main camera is now child of the player. And if we, for example, press play right now, you will see that camera is following us, and it's not perfect, because right now I will play your cans rotate. And also using this main camera as a main camera point, which will follow our player, is really bad practice. And because it leads to a lot of complications, lots of weird rotational movements and so on. So it's not the best way, and we not gonna use this main camera. But let me first talk about a few things. Let's imagine that we have the camera inside our player, and let's say that we want to look up and down with our mouse. Well, first of all, it means that we want to get some information about our mouse. Well, after that, when we want to look up and down, what should happen? Well, let me go in the scene wheel and let me rotate this camera up and down. Well, what is happening here? Let's check. So yeah, when we'll want to look up and down, we are obviously able to rotate this camera up and down, right? And it will work fine. But when we want to look around, for example, left and right, we will not be able to only move this camera left and right. Indeed, we should also consider the fact that in those cases, our player itself should rotate. So our player should rotate to left and right. So for the left and right movement, so for the rotation, we want to rotate our player. But to look up and down, now we should rotate only camera. Because if we rotate player up and down, it doesn't make sense, because our player will end up like this, something like this. And that's not exactly what we want. But also when we rotate the up and down our camera, R10 while he was changing. Not YRX instead, it's weird. I know, but this is how Unity works sometimes. And when we change the rotation on the X, as you see Y while it was changing, so it's opposite way our rotations. But the thing is that, now we know that in order to rotate up and down, we want to rotate our camera itself. And in order to look around and rotate our player, we want to change the rotation of the player itself. So what we will do, let's select the player. Well, we don't need to have rotations. So I will make it 0, 0, 0 for the rotation. I will also take this camera out of the player, because we don't need it. Let's leave it like this for now. I will just change rotations. Also, we don't need to have those ones I was just showing you. Let's go in game view. Okay, the basic look alright. Now let's go in the player movement script and let's start working on it. Well, first of all, what we need, let me just make the script bigger. Alright, we will need to have some variables in order, everything to actually work. And let's start working on them. So I will make some space here. And well, first variable will be to have for the camera point. And this camera point will be just empty game object. And we will place it just for the perfect position instead of the main camera. And we will use that a point and it will act like our camera point basically. And we can say public transform point. And let's call this one player who will point. and we can comment everything out for you to easier understand. So you can tell that it represents players will point. So how our player will use the word? Well, also we will need, since we will need to have some mouse inputs. To control our mouse inputs, we will need to have some kind of sensors, some kind of sensitivity. And for that, let's create some wearable public float. And let's call this one mouse sensitivity. Just like this. And we can make it by default something, but well, we will change it later in the Unity editor. Well, we also want to have some vertical rotation for the player's view. For that, we will create private floats. And let's call this one vertical rotation. See vertical rotation just like this. And also, well, we need to have some mouse inputs. And for mouse inputs, we only care about X and Y. So we can use vector too, because it will be for the looking around. And we can say private. A float, no, not the float, sorry. Vector 2, and let's call this one mouse inputs. Alright, well, we can also add few extra details such as inward tower looking. You probably have seen a lot of games in the settings have the option to inward look. What it means is that, for example, when we take our mouse up, we generally are looking at the upside and we are rotating upside. But if we select the inward look, when we take our mouse up, our player will look down. And well, some players like that. So let's include that as well. Public pool. Let's call this one inwards look. Just in case someone wants to include it into actual game. Also, we need to get reference to our main camera. So we can say private camera, and well, we can call it main cam just like this. If we want, or let's call this one play your camera. Play your camera, okay, now that's all. I think if we will need something, we will add later. And now let's start working. First, let's get reference to our main camera within get component method. So in the start, we can say play your camera right. But well, actually, we don't want to use the care get component because getting reference to the camera is easier. We can just say camera.main. A Unity will automatically know that we are referring to our main camera. Alright, now in update. First thing that we will do before these inputs and things like that, we will get our mouse inputs. And to do that, we can say mouse input equals a new vector 2. A new vector to takes two variables, two parameters x and y. And for the x, we will get inputs about our mouse x. So if we go in Edit Project Settings, we have the inputs for the mouse x and mouse y. This is for mouse inputs. And let's go back, and here we can say input. UH.getAccess wrong. And in brackets and quotation marks, we should say mouse x again, everything case sensitive. So type it correctly. And for the y, we can say input.getAccess wrong. In brackets, we can quotation marks. We can say mouse y or just like this. Now we have information about our mouse input, and we can multiply it to some sensitivity for the smooth movement. And to control how sensitive will our mouse be, because it's very important. So we are multiplying it to some mouse a sensor, okay? Now that we have our mouse input, next step will be to rotate the player horizontally based on this mouse input. And to do that, we can say transform. So it's rotation, and well, this transformed dot rotation takes few parameters. It should be cool, not the brackets should be cool, since we are working with rotations. UH rotations are controlled with quaternions. And we will use quaternion dot Euler. Not in where's Euler and basically. These Eulers are transforming the degrees into the axis. So we can say, well, it also needs to have the x, y, and z, but we also should consider that Well, let's first do now for the x. Because for the x, it will be just transform dot rotation. UH.L all our angles dot x comma now 40y. What we should do, well, we should say transform dot rotation dot all our angles dot y. But we should add also mousing put here. We should consider mousing put here because as I said, we should actually rotate our camera when we want to look up and look down. And for that we will add here mouse input dot x. And well, for the z, we can simply say transform dot rotation dot Euler angles dot z. And don't forget to have semicolon at the end. So that's pretty much it. I will show you one more time this line. We are just getting rotation for the x and for the z. Regular way with the help of older angles. And for the y we are using this mouse inputs x position. Well, now that we have our rotation horizontally, the next thing will be to add some vertical. Mouse input to vertical rotation right. Because we also need some vertical rotational movements. And well, it will be simple. We just need to say vertical input, not the input. Vertical rotation equals Well, let's make plus equals. Since we already know what is this. Plus equals, yeah. Mouse inputs and this time we will use y obviously. And well, plus equals, I will remind you. We are just taking vertical rotation. And we are adding some mouse inputs dot y. Alright, we have added some vertical rotations as well. Well, also we should consider the fact that, yeah, we can look up and down without a mouse, but we don't want to look free 60 degrees up or free 60 degrees down right. We want to limit our how we look our game. How far we can look up or how far we can look down. And that's how games are made in general. They all have some limitations and well, to have some limits, we can say vertical rotation equals, and we can use some mathmafia dot clamp. And this clamping allows us to limit some rotation between two numbers. First of all, let's say what we are doing. We are clamping vertical rotation comma, and now we can say some limit numbers. I think 60 in general works fine in most of the games, so we will start for 60 and 60. This is minimum and maximum. It also means that minus 60 will be for looking down, and 60 will be for looking up, okay. We successfully clamped it. Next thing, what to do? Well, we can also now use this inward look. As I said, to have some option for the players to inward sum. Now we will point our rotations. And to do that, we can say simple logic here that if inward look. So if inward look is activated, what do you want to do? Well, play your wheel. Point a dot rotation should be cool to again. We will use quaternion dot Euler. Since we are doing some rotations, we will pass our vertical rotation because we are working with vertical rotation. For the north look. After that, we can basically pass y and z simply. So to do that now, we can say player will point dot older angles dot y. And same for the z. Player will point dot older angles dot z. And that's pretty much it. We are just taking vertical rotation for the x, okay? Well, We should also say else, because if this inward look is not activated, well, we can basically copy this line of code, and we only need to change one thing. Vertical rotation will have minus in front. So if we activate this inward look, we can use this later if you will have some options, settings and so on in the menus. And if the players will activate inward look, they will have some option to have some inward look on the mouse. But if this inward look will not be activated, well, we will have just default standard rotational movement. Alright, well, I think that's what else to add here. Well, we added the rotations successfully, and yeah. Let's say first of all this script, and let's see how it works and what it does in general. So control in this or command in this. Well, we should make one more point before I forgot out. Outside of the update, outside of this big updates function. And by the way, to find the closing bracket of the update, if you have difficulties find it, you just need to select the opening one of the update. And this one will automatically show. So outside of the update, we can create one private void late update function. And late update runs out after our update. And it's very good to be used with our player camera mechanics. For example, and basically we should say that our player camera dot transform dot position should be equal to our player's wheel point, because we want to use that empty game object for the wheel point, so player wheel point dot position. And we should also do same for the rotation. Player camera dots transform dots rotation, and should be equal to player wheel point dots rotation. Just like this. Quick, quite big script, and let's save this script. Let's go back and let's test how everything works. We should do few things. First of all, we need to create our player's viewpoint. And to do that, what we can do, we can basically create viewpoint in the player. Right-click, create empty. And let's call this one player viewpoint. And the thing is that now we should place our camera how we will like it to be placed. For example, like so, we can also rotate it bits. It's really up to you how you want your game to look like, for example, like this. Now, thing is that this main camera and player will point now should have same kind of positions and rotations. Therefore, that will select after we adjust our main camera. So how we want to look out our game, to look to our camera to be. After that, we will just select the main camera. We will select 3 dots. And we will say copy components. And in the player wheel points, let's hit 3 dots and paste component values. And now those two are positioned exactly same. They have same rotations. And we'll just drag main camera outside the player, because we don't want main camera to be part of the player, as I said, to avoid all of the complications. Instead, we gonna use this player wheel point. Now let's select the player, let's scroll down, okay. And we need to add player wheel point here. So let's add player wheel point, and well, we also need to have some kind of mouse sensitive. With you, let's make it 1. And you see we have option of inward look. I will not activate it by default, so it will be deactivated in my case. But if you are used to it to inward looks, you can activate this anyway. Let's now press play. And let's check how everything is working. Yeah, indeed, we have the player camera. We can rotate our camera. Only thing that's is little bit of problem is that we have our mouse on the screen, which is not like a good. And it's basically we should basically work on it and we should fix. We will fix that in the next video. But for now, everything seems to be working, so I'll end this video over here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any new videos. See you in the next videos.